I appreciate each of you being here. I'm going to try really hard to keep us on task and keep us on a timeline and not waste your time. I appreciate so much your willingness to come and hear. The main thing is I wanted people to be able to get, I probably received 50 emails and I tried to respond to all of them, but I wanted staff here so staff could be able to hear your concerns, your comments, and also be able to answer and give you factual information that's not an opinion. You know, it's facts. And so I wanted y'all to be able to have facts when you hear about things and to be given those to you. So I want to thank all of our staff members. I'm not going to introduce each of them. I'm going to let them, when they speak, introduce themselves and say what department that they're a part of. But I appreciate them working late to help with this meeting tonight. We all recognize here, and I'm Cindy Mills, the District 4 Commissioner, but we all recognize that these items are very important to each of you or you wouldn't be here tonight. Please allow the entire presentation, just a few ground rules, to be made before asking questions. We're going to try to do the presentation, get through it, and then have a microphone. You don't even have to get up to come up to the podium. We'll bring the microphone to you. We're going to try to, we don't have a huge crowd, so we might not have to. We were looking at doing it just like a normal public comment and doing 2 minutes each. But if you've got a spokesperson for the group that needs longer, or with this smaller crowd, we'll just try to play it with the amount of time we have left. The main thing, I want to be able to hear everybody and make sure we have covered. We tried to take the emails and try to cover all the topics that have been raised the best that we could. Following the presentation, the microphone will be roving. You can ask questions. If time does not allow us to reach everyone, comment forms will be provided in the entrance area. If you'll complete the form with a question, your contact information, and leave it with a member of our staff, I promise you, we'll get back to you. So starting with, I was asked the question by one person that wrote in that said, you know, we've got 2 zonings and they're both coming up on the same night at the next meeting next Thursday. And so it was important that I didn't want to wait until we got to that meeting and somebody say, well, why did you have a town hall for one and you didn't the other? And they're actually competitors. They're friendly competitors, but they're competitors. They're going for the same type companies. And we have to, in government, make sure we have a level playing field for everyone and that we're not forcing one developer to go through more hoops than another. So I was questioned, you're trying to do something shady by having both of those together. And I'm like, no, I promise I'm not. I promise that this is just the best way to get facts out. And I'll make it clear over and over again that this is one ZA, this is a different ZA, this is where one is on the map, that's where another one is on the map. And yes, they are similar products, but they are 2 different zonings being treated as separate, but at the same time having similar conditions, because it's like I said when we did the public participation meeting at Hampton, we're trying to create a look and a feel much like the Meadows or Bluegrass, where you drive in and you won't see that's one developer and that's another developer, but you'll see cohesiveness. You'll see that it all looks like it does, it was truly thought about and it all goes together. And much like your homes do in your neighborhood, but that it's made to where it's a high standard and it goes throughout. So this first, if we'll back up, or I got the thing. The Pacific Group is ZA4071. It's 36.76 acres, Setting Down Road, south of Bottoms Road, a half a mile from Georgia 400. They're rezoning agriculture A1 to restricted industrial M1. Application is not subject to a DRI because the amount of square footage is not over the 500,000 threshold. Under direction of the BOC application, it included a staff review. Public hearing was held on July 21st, and the anticipated vote is on August the 18th. So if you look, this area is where we're talking about. we can go to the next one. Or I've got it, I can do it. The Hughes Group is ZA4056, and it is 74.328 acres, Bottoms Road and Georgia Highway 400, rezoning agriculture A1, highway business and commercial business district to restricted industrial M1. Application was subject to a DRI review, which we have back. Public hearing and anticipated BOC vote is also on August the 18th. And these are the renderings, the projected renderings of what the buildings will look like. I know that the Hughes Group brought boards out there in the hallways, so if you wanted to look at those, but they're very similar product, and we'll show you that through our conditions. So I want to ask our county attorney, a lot has been made of how this area, where did this designation come from? Or how is this in accordance to staff review? And why isn't it residential? And how did this come about? And so I asked, I don't know how many of you were involved when the Georgia Stone products came through and we did the meetings at your clubhouse, and actually your HOA sat down with us and helped write the conditions. But Carolyn, was it Carolyn Vaca? She was so good at helping us come up with the list of prohibitions because she had done extensive research. Always when I was around her, she was always so good to look into things further. And so a lot of the prohibitions come from her and her suggestions. So Ken, if you will, would you go through the history of Hampton, of the apartments and Georgia Stone and how that came to be?
Madam Commissioner, of course, my name is Ken Gerard. I'm your county attorney. And the story of this area is a lengthy one, which mercifully I will not be giving you a lengthy explanation this evening. But
can y'all hear him?
All right. How about now? Is that better? All right. Okay. So I'm your county attorney. I'm Ken Gerard. And you have up on the screen here, and with Ms. Bowles' help, we're going to show you two of these parcels. And again, I just think it would be helpful to have a little bit of the history of how much effort the county has expended to try and ensure that there was some degree of light industrial or an industrial area to be preserved, because there have been a lot of forces throughout the last 20 years against that. So I'm going to ask Ms. Bowles to show the large property, and I hope y'all can see that. That's probably the one that is the closest to the Hampton neighborhood. And then if you'll go down to the small property, that is the traditional sand mine, and I'm sure that most of y'all are very, very familiar with that. What you may not know is that since 1992, these two parcels have been the subject of at least 5 different lawsuits. The origin of the lawsuit commences with the small parcel. That is what is traditionally known as the sand mine operation. Back in 1992, the Board of Commissioners entered into a settlement agreement with an entity called the entity was called I believe it was called Sun Mine, is what it was called. And we entered into a settlement agreement to allow that property to remain a surface mine operation subject to very serious restrictions on it. And the settlement agreement further provided that it would be locked into a perpetual A1 zoning designation forever. And the county rigorously enforced that settlement agreement against the operator of the sand mine for years, maybe 8 years or so. So in about 1999 or 2000, in comes the property owner with their settlement agreement with the county and says, look, the settlement agreement says this property is zoned A1, and whatever the uses in A1 from 1992 continue to exist now, irrespective of what the Board of Commissioners has done, and we want to put a landfill here. At that point, the Board of Commissioners repudiated the settlement agreement and said that it was void and had never been effective because the Board of Commissioners did not want a landfill on that piece of property. We ended up going to the Court of Appeals where the county prevailed. And in fact, the settlement agreement was deemed to have been void, and therefore we preserved the integrity of that property as at least not a landfill. All right? So fast forward, and the same property, the small property, again, it was not owned by Georgia Stone Products, by the way. It was owned by a company called Buckhorn Ventures. That was the name of the property. They then came back in and filed a rezoning application to zone the sand mine from A1 to mine, or our MINE, the mine zoning designation, which would have allowed, sure enough, a landfill. And that was in fact denied by the Board of Commissioners. In the meantime, if you could point out the large piece of property, this piece of property came in for a zoning from A1 to Res 4, which was in fact granted by the Board of Commissioners. This was in about 2006 in our little historical saga we're going through now. And so this was zoned in 2006 for Res 4 for 648 units. So no sooner than the ink was dry off of this rezoning to 648 units on that large parcel, then Buckhorn, remember the sand mine operator down below, they sued the county because their argument was, you've basically put this large residential presence right on the doorstep of our sand mine operation, thereby setting us in a collision course with what will invariably be a bunch of upset neighbors up top. So they sued us. That resulted in the county settling, go down to the smaller property, with Georgia Stone Products, at that time it was still Buckhorn, but that property, to allow it to then continue to be a sand mine, but also for it to be an industrial campus. So we rezoned the property to allow that. The next thing was, as soon as the ink was dry on that, the property above the 648 residential units, they sued us and said, okay, now you've put this really heavily intensive industrial use below us, therefore you have minimized the value of our residential property. In which case, in 2011, the Board of Commissioners approved a settlement with that parcel to allow not 648 units, but 1,000 units. The theory behind the rezoning was to allow the density to be compacted, get it away from the sand mine to its south, but otherwise allow them more density. So that was sort of the litigation that has brought us here.
So Ken, just so the ones that weren't a part of it, the 1,000 apartments were all going to be right there
Yes.
in that area right next to Hampton.
That's correct. So in the meantime, those apartments were approved by the Board of Commissioners. In the meantime, Georgia Stone Products, going back down to the bottom, they purchased the sand mine from Buckhorn, and in the context of them revving up that use again, because it had been dormant for a while, the sand mine had been dormant, in the context of them ramping back up that operation, the district commissioner and the county had a negotiation with them and said, look, there may be opportunities for us to salvage this industrial node and also not dilute the effectiveness of the industrial area by these 1,000 apartments on the back door of Hampton. And so in the context of that, Georgia Stone Products took a good look at the 1,000 apartment piece of property on Hampton's doorstep and said, you know what, we may be interested in acquiring that. It'll provide us some buffer for our sand mine operation, and perhaps we could then salvage it to maintain it as a light industrial use and get all those homes out of there, because 1,000 homes is a significant burden on county infrastructure, et cetera. And so the thought was, let's try to preserve the industrial area, light industrial. And so we worked out a fairly complicated, but I thought effective zoning to allow the M1 next to Hampton. There was a lot of effort that went into that zoning to ensure that everything that was forward-facing Hampton had an architectural look and style that would be pleasing from at least the exterior facades. And with that action, we were able to shut down those 1,000 apartments forever and otherwise build in a product that hopefully would be more appealing to the Hampton subdivision. Commissioner?
Thank you so much. And I think if you could just mention in the conditions about the road being anticipated in those conditions.
Right. So when we were dealing with Georgia Stone Products and trying to figure out all the intricacies of them purchasing that northern property next to your boundary and otherwise sort of just setting forth our mutual understanding of what was expected of both of us, this connector drive between Leland and Smith was contemplated. And Georgia Stone Products indicated that they saw some utility to that they would like to contribute to that if it was reasonable, and they agreed that they would contribute some of the product or some of the aggregate for that road if in fact it made financial sense to them. I would also point out one further thing, Commissioner, and just to emphasize this to you, but that connection, this connection between Smith and Leland has been discussed in the county. I've been here since 2000, has been discussed since about 2002. Former Commissioner Eddie Taylor, who's no longer with us, but he was the first person that ever raised that with me as that being something that would be attractive and would make sense out there, but that's been decades ago.
I don't want to leave out the fact that we met with all the other neighbors too. Cantrell Circle was greatly impacted, much more than Hampton, by the sand mine business, but it was a sand mine that had no conditions with it, and we were able, because of them coming forth and needing something, to get them lots of stuff on Cantrell, you know, to set up where they had to call, you know, have a call thing when they blast and let people text them, and things like a fence and buffers and all these things that they never had before. So that was a positive to them. So while we were meeting and having several meetings with Hampton and Hampton's HOA, we were also meeting with Cantrell Circle to get that, to make it much better, more tolerable, you know, to what they had been used to before.
I think, Commissioner, you're right, and the only thing I would say is, sort of having watched this unfold over the years, the thing that has occurred recently that had not occurred before was that some of these land use initiatives were now looked at holistically and not just in a silo of this and that, but in fact with respect to the entire area looked at one time. So I agree.
Thank you. So I wanted to go into the transportation issue because that's been one of the big things that I think I've gotten the most emails about people being concerned about this type of development coming in and about transportation and, you know, not just when was that road anticipated, did it occur, when did it change? And I don't know if John or David wants to talk about the transportation plan and when Leland Drive Extension first came up in it, and then go ahead and feel free to talk about other issues with transportation too.
So David McKee, Assistant County Manager, Engineering, Transportation, Roads and Bridges falls under my umbrella. I'll get it started, Commissioner, and then I'm going to turn it over to John Kennard, our Engineering Director, a little bit, and I'll let John talk about how we got to kind of where we are with the transportation plan today. But in 2018, the Board of Commissioners adopted what we refer to as our Transportation Improvement Plan. And that's that Forsyth County Transportation Plan mentioned here. Jacobs Engineering did that. It was a lot of modeling behind it, modeling intersections, roadways, and then there was, John may can quote exactly, 150 or so projects identified as part of that plan. What's highlighted on the screen to the left, what appears red to me, is that Leland Drive extension that Mr. Gerard just spoke about. That's identified in our transportation plan. And then the memorandum of agreement that from the sand mines, there's a highlight there about that. John, if you will, introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the process for that transportation plan. I'll also say moving forward, we're in the process now under contract or very soon will be under contract to update this transportation plan, which is the normal practice we would go through. So we'll do additional modeling, remodeling everything based off of current and then proposed land uses, and then develop additional projects for that.
Yes, my name's John Kennard. I'm the Director of Engineering for Forsyth County. And as David stated, we last updated our transportation plan in 2018. It was a little over a year-long period of time. There was multiple public meetings and public involvement throughout that process. And the end result of that plan incorporated a proposed project to extend Leland Drive to Smith. So that project has been in the plan since 2018, and it was adopted in late 2018. And But this is fairly typical of any transportation plan update. New projects are identified and added to the plan. You know, they're all subject to funding, but you know, there are multiple new road connections that are typically added during that process. And as David stated, we within the next month or two, we'll be contracting with a consultant to do another update. These updates are done about every 5 years. And so beginning in a couple of months, we'll continue that process again, and that update will probably extend to the end of 2023, when the board will be able to approve us a new updated plan.
And I want you to pay close attention to the slide, because as Ken was saying, we had our conditions, and then we had a memorandum of understanding with Georgia Stone Products. And one of those items that, you know, we put up on the screen and we went to Hampton and talked about, I mean, it was very supported. I mean, your president spoke in support of this happening, was Georgia Stone Products further agrees to consider providing certain considerations, grading and site prep work for a proposed roadway that will connect Smith Drive and Leland Drive, and will work with the county in good faith to provide such site development services if financially and reasonably practical. What they were hoping is they were going to find more product under there, and if they did, then they were willing, and they have massive amounts of equipment, and that way it would be more cost efficient for us if they work with us to do that. I mean, do we have to have them? No. It just made it more financially feasible to be able to get it done sooner if it was of a financial benefit to them as well. They also had just agreed to let go of 1,000 apartments to do this 200-acre industrial park, but they, in order to sell it, they have to have a way to get people to it. So they have something to gain as well by helping the county with that. So David, now I'd like for us, because we've talked a lot about it, the public participation and the public hearing, about signal warrants and about getting a red light at Bottoms, and the difficulty of having that. And I know you and I met with GDOT just a week ago. Can you share some of the conversations? Because I think the road has been made so prominent that we'll never get the red light because we don't know if we'll get the road. And I'd like for you to share sort of what GDOT told us.
Yeah, Commissioner, I will do my best, and if there's specific questions as we progress through the meeting about specific warrants, John will be able to answer those. But we met with GDOT, Georgia Department of Transportation, and discussed specifically the intersection of Bottoms Road at State Route 400. And specifically about that intersection was signal warrants. Briefly, from a very 30,000-foot level, what signal warrants are. DOT has policies in place, thresholds in place that have to be met for periods of time before they will allow a signal to be installed. There's a number of different thresholds. What's referenced on the screen right here is MUTCD. That's the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, standard manual that's there. I think the takeaway for discussion purposes here is that as for whatever development that goes, or whatever improvements that would be proposed in this area, that they perform a signal warrant analysis based off of the proposed and projected traffic. Complete that signal warrant analysis, complete an intersection control evaluation, and then what that will tell, those two studies will tell, is what exactly is warranted, what the timings will be on those signals, if the signal's warranted. As I sit here today, I can't tell you anything that's projected here, whether it will or will not meet warrants. History tells me that it's probably going to be pretty close with what is already zoned and going in across 400, just to the south of the falls, the additional apartments and developments that are going in there. Part of that zoning, we had them, or the commissioner had them extend the road to the south, tie into Setting Down Circle, Setting Down Circle also connects right there where Bottoms Road does. So there's a lot of development from the west side of 400 that would also affect that signal. All of that will be taken into account when they do a signal control evaluation of that intersection. I will say that there's been discussion about this connection road as it relates to signal warrants. One of the takeaways from DOT is, and what we've all talked about, is those are two separate issues. The signal warrants will be looked at for existing conditions and proposed conditions based on the developments, and then the road connection is a completely distinct and separate issue that could be a driver in part of that, but is not would not dictate whether the signal would come or not. And there's some challenges with that road connection, which is why Georgia Stone Products has agreed to work with the county when we ever do make that connection. Commissioner, I hope that was
Yes.
generally.
I was pleasantly surprised because I thought in doing the Coal Mountain Connector, the road that's going to be from Bridgetown at 369 over to Highway 9, I worked for 2 years to get that red light approved, and it was contingent upon the road being built, so I just knew that this one would be the same. And when the Hughes property had their DRI done, it says in the DRI that a red light, if warranted, they should have to put it in. And so there's cooperation from the other zoning as well, that they will put money toward that red light. They want the red light as bad as y'all do. I mean, they want it very much so. And I mean, they want to have it there so their transportation will use it. It'll make their development better. And so I think I was very encouraged that we got as much positive from GDOT and as much certainty, because GDOT's really not good at giving you certainty, or, you know, because of the warrants and because of what. And now what needs to happen, these guys have agreed to do a traffic, what is it called, a traffic light?
It's a traffic study is what it is, but it takes it to the next level. What's submitted through the DRI, Development and Regional Impact, is just a very high level conceptual traffic study. What this does is it does a little more detailed evaluation of the proposed development.
Signalization study or
and
something.
then it will study the intersection and determine what's needed, if anything is needed at that signal or at that intersection.
All right, thank you so much. Next, issues were raised in the emails about water and sewer. In particular, one email was talking about the Hampton Franchise Service Area. I don't know if Barry or Ken want to do that.
I can start with respect to that. Again, that's going back 20 plus years ago, and I'll obviously want to hear what Mr. Lucas has to say. But the issue for me is there was, at the inception of Hampton, there was a package plant that was the sewer delivery provider for Hampton. But subsequent thereto, Forsyth County and Waterscape Resources entered into what we have traditionally called a tri-party agreement. And that tri-party agreement resulted in Forsyth County providing $500,000 as seed capital for the creation of a larger sewer plant in the Hampton area that had an 800,000 gallon per day target capacity. Forsyth County's $500,000 purchased 5/8 or 500,000 gallons of that target capacity, and corresponding with that tri-party agreement in 1999 was the creation of a new Hampton Franchise Service Area. That was the area that Waterscape and Setting Down, which were the two private entities, they would be able to serve with their larger plant. And Forsyth County would then have a service area that it would be able to serve with the 500,000 gallons that it acquired with its money and by way of the tri-party agreement. Commissioner Mills, I will tell you that the agreement that was drafted back in 1999, the service area was less than precise. And we have exploited some recent opportunities to renegotiate that tri-party agreement and to batten down the hatches on exactly what Hampton can serve versus what the county can serve. and we feel like we have a much better deal and a much better relationship with that private sewer provider. Barry?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to what you said, we did contribute, I think you said 500,000, and eventually it was 3.1 million that the county contributed towards the Hampton plant, but which was a very good deal to get the 500,000 gallons of sewer capacity. And then with the latest renegotiation in 2022, we redefined how the sewer is classified. It used to be related to a number of taps. Now it's strictly gallons, 500,000 gallons the county has and is able to send to the Hamptons plant.
And we also updated our trust agreement with Hampton.
Correct, yes. Updated the trust agreement so that the county's there. If anything ever happens with the operations of that plant, the county is obligated to step in and make sure that it's run properly.
Which was
Commissioner,
very
if I may.
supported by the community, because if not, it could.
Commissioner,
be
if I may, real
bad.
quick, what's shown on the map there is just what we've just been talking about, that franchise agreement. The area that appears to me in light green to the left side, that's the portion of that area, that service area that the Forsyth County has rights to send the sewer to Hampton. The darker, I guess I'll say red color, and then that lighter red color over to the right, those are the two areas that are Hampton properties that are served by the Waterscapes utilities itself. This map was a product of the 2022 agreement. As Mr. Gerard said prior to that, it was extremely difficult and took a lot of attorney fees to determine where, look, and Ken's laughing, where a specific piece of property was and who was going to serve it. So we have a much better level of service out there now.
And
as a
David, the
product of this.
red, is that the rendering plant and they have their private sewer?
No, ma'am,
Or
the
no?
red, Barry, can you explain what that farthest to the east there, that red section, it's a development that they have a pump station out there, they pump it back.
It's the cobblestone development. So they built the pump station back in, I think it was 2005. But the area that pump station could serve was never defined very well. So this really defines what can gravity flow to that pump station that's been there since 2005 and pumps to the Hamptons.
Thank you. And Barry is our water and sewer director. I don't know if we said that or not.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, that's good. Thank you all. That was good information. So Ken, then we get to where did the American Rescue Plan ARPA funds come from, and how did the county designate? And then I'm going to let Slade also talk about how they came up with these parcels. But if you'll talk about the ordinance and how it was written.
Right. Well, the ARPA fund is just sort of some of the COVID national funding that was made available nationwide, and obviously Forsyth County, like many other governments, was entitled to get some of those proceeds. I'll leave to Mr. McKee or Mr. Lucas to talk about the technical aspects, but what I can tell you is the Board of Commissioners did in fact want to take advantage of some of these funds for purposes of extending infrastructure, sewer infrastructure uniquely. But the Board of Commissioners gave me a specific task, which was a little bit daunting, which was to say, we want to be able to use these ARPA funds to build out some sewer to serve various nodes. Nodes just means a specific geographic or defined area. And so you see on the screen there node 1, 2, 3, you don't see a node 4, but a node 5. And so the direction that I was given from the Board of Commissioners was, we want something to guarantee that once we use these ARPA funds and run this sewer infrastructure to these nodes, that there can be no allowance for these sewer nodes to serve anything but non-residential uses until such time as certain thresholds are met. And that was a little bit of a challenge because the Board of Commissioners typically has authority to do whatever it wants to with respect to infrastructure and who gets to serve. So we knew we needed to have something that was not just a resolution, so we actually adopted an ordinance. And an ordinance has a specific protocol for how we adopt these ordinances, and the Board of Commissioners basically agreed to self-limit itself, and we defined these nodes in the ordinance by tax parcels, and basically we set thresholds that have to be satisfied before there can be any non-residential connectivity of sewer within these nodes, and that would include adjacent properties to the nodes. And I can't say it's for every one of them, but the typical methodology was 75% of the parcels in the nodes or in the areas comprising the nodes have to be served with sewer before there is any allowance for any non-residential connectivity. And that was something the board was very serious about, and so we locked it down, candidly,
You
commissioners.
said
as
it backwards.
What's that now?
You got the residential and the non backwards.
75% have to be used for non-residential
Non-residential.
purposes before it can be used for residential purposes. And we locked that down by way of an ordinance, which was about as tight as it can be locked down, because it would literally take multiple public hearings to change that. So,
Counselor, do you remember what the vote was for that? Was it a 5-0 vote, all commissioners in favor of promoting the commercial to balance our digest?
I recall it being a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
And actually, it was something we were very proud of, to be able to do something to help keep jobs here, you know, with so many, 63% traveling outside the county to go to work, and our tax base being so lopsided and being such a bedroom community. I'd like for them to, Slade and Barry, the commissioners were not a part at all of picking out where these sites or nodes were. They kept it completely away from us because they didn't want it to be political and didn't want to run the risk of it turning into something that it wasn't. And they wanted to also be able to find the right areas for the commercial product that was being sought out from the chamber, that you could have, literally they wrote parcel numbers down, because I was surprised by that parcel numbers were listed in the ordinance, because the way the residential developers are gobbling everything up, we knew that if we didn't select those sites and put as Slade would say, you know, get your hands around it, it would be gone. And the opportunity to do something for creating jobs and more economic development in the county, it would pass us by. So Slade, you want to talk about how y'all chose these?
Slade Gullidge, Ford Forsyth in the Forsyth County Chamber of Commerce. Our job is to recruit industry, to recruit capital investment, jobs, and opportunity to Forsyth County. And last year we had a moment where we were running out of product, and by product I mean warehouse space, industrial space, to put the type of project activity that we were seeing. We were fearful that we were going to run out of product, so we started looking at parcels that we thought that strategic infrastructure would be one, affordable, and it would unlock the potential for commercial development on these parcels. So we worked directly with Mr. Lucas and his staff. We had a large number of parcels that were all over the county, but then we worked with him and his staff because of the expertise that they have with where the sewer is, what would be the most affordable routes, how would we be able to make that work, and we defined it down to a number of parcels, and we were very pleased to work with them. So professional, very pleased that the commissioners were amenable to what was suggested, and the fact that they, in their wisdom, put around that structure of guaranteeing that was going to be commercially viable property and not be residential.
And we had a certain amount, $17 million, so you couldn't get it to all sites.
Exactly.
You were trying to figure out what the costs were, so it wasn't going to cost the citizens a lot of money.
That's right.
You know, that we could use those ARPA funds, which are the citizens too, by the way, but that it could be used for its intended purpose. And Barry, have you got anything to add?
Not a lot, that's exactly right. I mean, we worked very closely with the chamber staff and figured out, you know, where we could run the sewer with, like you said, with a certain amount of money that was dedicated to this. So we're a little nervous about that now as prices continue to go up. So we're continuing to look at these things and figure out, you know, how to make the budget fit the lines that we need to run.
And so then the question, there was a lot of questions that went to the comprehensive plan. And how does the comprehensive plan work? What is the comprehensive plan? How often do we update it? You know, the guidelines for land use decisions, whatnot. I'm going to ask our Department of Community and Development Director, Tom Brown.
Hello, everyone. Tom Brown. The angle here of this microphone, I'm not going to be able to really make eye contact with you and see the screen at the same time. Forgive me for not staring down the audience. The comprehensive plan is our vision. It's the community's vision for growth and development. It identifies the action items that we want to take over the next 5 years to help us reach our goals. And it guides our elected officials as they make land use decisions. One way it does that is the character areas. That's a clip of our character area map is on the screen, and the two zonings are not part of the official map. That's been added for the purposes of tonight's meeting. But it shows that those properties are in the North Georgia 400 character area, and within the document it talks about different goals and objectives for that particular area of the county. We, at a minimum, update our plan every 5 years. We are in the final stages of an update as we speak. It's been transmitted to the state, and we anticipate the update will be adopted in October. The fosterforsyth2022.com is a website dedicated to that update where you can find more information about the process and the draft documents. Can we advance that one slide? All right, the Unified Development Code. You'll hear that discussed in zoning circles, and these next few slides are essentially the zoning and comprehensive planning 101 that I'm going to run you through. So our zoning ordinance is one of the tools we use to implement our comprehensive plan. It's a power from the state of Georgia we have to use zoning. We identify different zoning districts in this document, and for each district we identify the uses that are permitted and the performance standards for those uses. When I say performance standards, I'm talking about things like the size of a lot, how tall a building could be, how many parking spaces are required, things of that nature. We assign each property in the county to a district, and when we issue permits for new development activity, we review them per the zoning ordinance to ensure that they are in compliance with those requirements. Next slide. Zoning itself, we have zoning broken down into 4 main groups in our county: agricultural, commercial, industrial, and residential. Within each of those groups, we have multiple zoning districts. And for the example of industrial, being that the theme of tonight's meeting, we have 3 different industrial districts: M1, M2, and mine. M1 is our light industrial district. M2 is our heavy industrial district. One example, having nothing to do with tonight's cases, but one example of many of the differences between these 2 districts. In M2, petroleum bulk storage sites are a permitted use. Someone with that zoning designation, M2 heavy industrial zoning, could come in and be permitted for a petroleum bulk storage site. In M1, that same use is prohibited. That would not be allowed. That's one example of many of how these uses are different. Next slide. We also rely in our zoning ordinance on overlay districts. Overlay districts establish a unique set of rules for a geographic area of the county. On the screen, the picture shows a small slice of our overlay district map. That's Setting Down Road that has a kind of teal green outline around it. That's the Setting Down Road is in the Coal Mountain Overlay District. It's approximately 750 feet from the center line of the road in each direction. It establishes an enhanced set of performance standards. Things like landscape, building materials, and signage all have a higher standard in that Coal Mountain Overlay District that is unique to that geographic area. Okay, next slide. Rezoning. So rezoning is the process of changing a property from one of those districts I talked about earlier to another. We have 2 types of applications for rezoning that we process in the county. We have a traditional applicant-driven application, and we also have county-initiated applications. Both types, regardless of what type, both types comply with the Georgia Zoning Procedures Law. And the most basic components of that are that we have a public hearing that's held here in this room before our elected officials. We provide notice through both a sign posted on the property and a legal ad in the paper. and we make the decision based on the general and special considerations that are identified in our zoning ordinance. That list includes the comprehensive plan. County-initiated applications run a streamlined process. They do not have a staff review unless requested by the Board of Commissioners at the time they are initiated. They do not go through a traditional public participation process, but again, the commissioners can direct the property owner to engage the public on any level they deem appropriate, the commissioners that is. And county-initiated applications do not go through our planning commission. Planning commission is a body appointed by our elected officials that would give a recommendation on a traditional zoning. That does not take place for a county-initiated application. Next slide. This is my final slide. August 18th, that's next week. I think everyone is aware of that. We covered it, but both these applications are on the agenda for that meeting. It's 5 p.m. here in this room. 4071 will appear on the agenda as old business. There will not be a public hearing that night dedicated to that particular zoning. That's an important point to make. That has already been held. Anyone that wanted to speak on that particular zoning that night would still have a chance if they signed up to speak during our public comment section of the meeting. They would have a dedicated 3 minutes to speak on the topic. And zoning application 4056 will be a public hearing. There'll be 10 minutes per side, up to 10 minutes per side, dedicated for both those speaking in favor or in opposition of the request. And in both examples, there is the potential for final action by our Board of Commissioners that night. So they could vote to make a final decision on either of those applications.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to speak for just a second about the county initiated, because that came up in several emails, you know, that there was something sinister with that, or I just wanted to explain my rationale for bringing it forward, which was voted and approved by a 5-0 vote. To bring it forward. That doesn't give the zoning. It doesn't guarantee the zoning. It just brings it forward, as Tom said, to expedite the category. We did have them do a staff review. I don't know if, Tom, you want to mention what the staff review showed?
The staff review was primarily evaluation of the site plan and identifies how the site plan is in compliance with the UDC or if there are any deficiencies. We've completed that for the first application. It was requested at the time of the motion, and for the other application, it was just you had requested just recently that we complete that. We've completed it. We do not make a standard recommendation, like a supportive or non-supportive statement on a county-initiated application, but each of those applications has received a staff review, and I can tell you from just a use standpoint, the first tier I think we would look at in a staff review would be, is the zoning district that's requested, does it match up with the comprehensive plan? For that character area that I mentioned before, the Georgia 400 North character area, light industrial zoning is shown as a appropriate zoning district. So from a staff standpoint, it cleared that first hurdle of being generally consistent with the comprehensive plan at that initial level of, is the zoning district appropriate?
When I look at economic development projects, I try to always save county initiated for something better, or something that is an economic development, something to get more jobs in our tax base. That doesn't mean you skirt on conditions, that these developers will tell you. They're very stringent conditions. But also, you know, I've used county initiated before. If something was zoned like for 800 units, or I'm using an example, and they were reducing it to 400, you know, if it was a positive something, or if we had a lot of old Res 3 that wanted to go back to agricultural, and our board was always, hands down, that's a wonderful thing, let's take it back to agricultural. You know, this one was, the one that had the DRI was getting such a stringent review from the ARC, and we literally wrote these conditions so hard because of trying to create an environment of a whole collective, cohesive something. So staff probably was more involved in writing these conditions than you typically ever are.
I agree with that.
And so it was, I went back though, because one of the commissioners said, did you have a staff review? I had not on one of them, and I requested staff to do the review, just so we would be sure, you know, that everything was being done and no stone was left unturned. So then we get into the prohibited uses that are in, these are very important, I think, when you're looking at an industrial park, because I've said the whole time we needed a different name for it, because the word industrial just scares people to death. And if we had called it business park, which we have discovered we do have a business park zoning category, but no one has ever used it. There's a reason. But hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to help improve that category to make it be usable so it doesn't send a negative, it's not a negative connotation if you're the developer for industrial, because you want to be able to attract people that can bring that type of business in. But it runs such a wide gamut that when you say the word industrial, it creates people so fearful of all the bad things, you know, the smells, the just uses that would hurt your property value. So here, I'm not going to read through all of these. Anybody that wants a set of the conditions sent to you, I've left my business cards on the back. You can write me. We'll send you a full set of conditions so you can review it. But as you can see, wood products, retreading, recapping facilities, anything to do with tires. I mean, there's just a long list of, I think, of fearful things that people see as industrial that cannot occur here. They're all prohibited. Here are so the Hughes Group ZA4056 that's on the front at 400, they're asking for cups. And then they can come up and address if you've got any concerns, but both of these industrial parks are really speculative right now. We're trying to create, because they don't know who the end user is going to be. And Blake, I hate to put you on the spot. I didn't know Blake was coming, but I'm happy he's here. Would you come up for just a second, the microphone, or talk really loud? We are recording this for anybody that can't come, so you can share it with your neighborhood. But Blake, would you tell about the 3 substations? Or Tony will bring, not Tony, Lauren will bring you a microphone. I just think that people don't realize the opportunity that might be here for what kind of businesses.
Yeah, my name is Blake House. I'm with Sawney EMC. We have to plan years in advance for power needs. You can't just build a substation and build transmission lines immediately when the need is there. So this area is obviously ripe for growth. Currently today we have 2 substations that feed this area. We have a need for another one, and it's currently being constructed off of Bottoms Road. Today, if a large user, and we're seeing more and more kilowatt hour needed in smaller space. For instance, down in the Meadows, McFarland, you might have someone who needs 10 megawatts. 10 megawatts is 10 Walmarts. 10 megawatts in a small 30,000 square foot building, something we never used to see. Data centers, crypto mining facilities, places like that can need a tremendous amount of power in a small space. If we had someone today who needed, let's say, 30 megawatts of power in and around the Hamptons area in a industrial building, the answer would be no. We can't provide it. We do not have it. So we're building for that area, and we're building for things like this. We're going to soon have 3 substations feeding that area, and it will simply give us way more flexibility to get the power back on when it goes off, to feed large users, give us better reliability, more flexibility, like I said, with how we get service, 3-phase service, to these types of buildings. So we're planning for the future. There could be a 4th substation at some point. There's a lot of growth in our system, and we serve portions of 7 counties, but there's a lot of growth on our system from coming north. Much like what we saw in the McFarland area around the Meadows and Bluegrass and now Halcyon, you have to stay ahead of the game. If you get behind the 8 ball, you can't catch up with regard to power and getting those services met.
But you told me that this area would be the only area really that has room on the grid.
Yeah, if in the same example, if someone moved in the Meadows today and said we need 10 megawatts, the answer is no, we don't have it. Where could we put 10 or 20 or 30 megawatts on our system? Possibly up 369 North, where we're building a new substation at 369 in Jotundown. There's maybe a couple of other places we could put it, but yeah, this to us, and again, I'm not taking sides at all. All I'm going to do is help our company meet the demands of our members, like we've done for 84 years in this county. But this, to me, seems perfect on the 400 corridor to meet the power needs and other things. So.
Thank you, because that was information I did not. I knew that they were building Georgia Transmission was building a substation, but I think that we all, you've got your traditional type of industrial that you see and you fear, but you don't realize how much, I didn't realize how much industrial's changed, that it might not, and it might be, but it might not be all the transfer trucks and that type of environment as much as it is, it could be something totally different that is something, we're not anticipating, but something that would be, something very good for the community. One other issue, and I wanted to ask Major Perkins if, and forgive me if Major's no longer your title. No, it's Chief. Oh, Chief. I asked because in that meeting we had, it was brought up about crime, and that industrial type facility was guaranteed, to bring more crime to your area, and hurt your home values as well because of the crime. And I did I did reach out to the sheriff's office and ask about that, and I asked tonight if they could come and speak to it. I also reached out because numbers were given at that meeting at Hampton that the car dealership had several cars stolen, have a lot of problems with that. So I called the owner of the dealership, and he said that in the time they've been open, they have only had 2 cars stolen total. One was at night and one was during the day, and that the sheriff's office caught that, and that was the only time they've had to chase after anybody. It hadn't happened 4 times in a week or 4 times in a year. It's been 2 since they've been open. So I just wanted to clarify that because I did reach out and talk directly to the owner and to the sheriff's office. So, Chief.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I reviewed the 2020-21 and the part of 2022 that we've done so far, and Don Jackson, let's talk about that. At that time, they've had 8 calls for service there, and one of those being a medical call. The other ones, there was a fraud. There was something else, identity fraud call there, and the commissioner's right. There's been very few stolen cars out of there. One instance I can think of that we did, they reported someone came onto the lot, did attempt to steal a car. Our deputies were nearby, as they are usually on 400. They were able to chase the car down and apprehend the suspect. That group that came up to steal the cars, they brought a stolen car with them, which we were able to recover that car as well. So we got 2 cars out of, one stolen from our county, one stolen from another county, but we were able to get both cars in that instant. I also reviewed our other industrial parks, our light industrial parks in that, to see what type of crime there were there. It's consistent with any other development that you would put in that type of area. There were a couple of break-ins, very few. Everything else that was in line with people being called for service. You know, if you work at a business in this industrial park and you had your identity stolen, you would call a deputy there to take a report. There was several traffic related issues. None of those were really initiated in the industrial parks, but usually on the major roads near them, and they pulled into the industrial parks. So if you look at the data, there's DUIs and things like that. In some of those DUIs, there were some drug-related arrests that were made in the industrial parks, and those were all were initiated by traffic stops that usually occurred outside the industrial parks, but then pulled into them. There was no great crime that we could detect that was initiated or caused by an industrial park. You know, everything was usually from outside that just happened to come into the park.
Thank you so much.
I'll be here. I can answer any questions on those. Just can I take it?
We are open to questions now. We're going to do the 2-minute time, and if we got another mic, or
He's pointing at me.
you can come up here.
Come on. What's that? Yeah. Okay.
Well, but we're recording, so I want to make sure you're heard.
I got one.
Sure.
Congratulations on your promotion.
Well, thank you.
I had a conversation with Sheriff Freeman probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and basically he concurred with exactly what some of the things you're saying.
Yeah. We talked today about this,
Right.
so we're
That's
on the
not
same
what I'm
page.
concerned about.
Yeah.
Okay. My point is, so when addressing the commissioners and talking about increasing the tax base, I understand that. There's more than one way to do it, though. My thinking is this, and Sheriff Freeman even confirmed it. Once you start adding more residents, once you start adding more businesses, you're going to have to add more deputies. That's more payroll, more police cars, more maintenance, more benefits, so on and so forth. So your increase in your tax base will be somewhat reduced to your bottom line. It's going to be completely different. So I think the commissioners are forgetting about that part. As you can tell from my southern accent, I'm not from here. I come from Long Island, New York. I've been here in Georgia for 37 years. Long Island, New York is strictly bedroom communities with rare exceptions like Grumman and a couple other small businesses. Our taxes are much higher than here, consequently. But still, there's plenty of room to compensate with our tax base here. Our taxes here are very low.
Can you say that again louder?
Our taxes here are very low.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that
Especially when you compare it to other parts of the country. So there's nothing wrong with having bedroom communities. My objection is putting industrial where you have a bedroom community 0.8 of a mile up the road. That's my complaint.
Thank you. Would anybody else, other comments?
I think it's a crime to tear down all that natural environment. I'm thinking about my children and my grandchildren, and what are they going to have? We keep building and building and building, and soon there's not going to be anything left. We're destroying this county with all the overbuilding to make money. We have enough. We have enough. Let's stop.
I have one right here, Commissioner.
Well, I moved up here probably about 18 years ago, and I love it here because I feel safe. And I turn on the news at night. I'm from Atlanta, native Atlanta. I'm not going to Atlanta now. I don't want to get shot, getting gas or going anywhere in Atlanta. And it's pathetic to see what's happened to Atlanta from the time, from years ago. And so a lot of us moved up here, and people are continuing to move up here. Look at our growth. They're moving up here because we have wonderful schools, because we have wonderful policemen, we have wonderful government, we have low taxes, we have all those things. But if we keep building and building, we're going to destroy that, and we're going to be another Atlanta. That's my concern.
Another comment, question?
Andy Coleman, I live in Hampton. This was quite the presentation, and I appreciate all the hard work from you guys that do this research. The zoning on 400, absolutely, it belongs there. We need to condition it. The one on the east side of Setting Down Road has no business being there. Never should have been county initiated. We fought an M1 zoning on Setting Down's eastern side 5 years ago. We got almost every resident in that area to sign a petition. We've done the same this time. The fact that that one was thrown in on the right side raises a few red flags. One being, I'm born and raised in this area, and I've been traveling Setting Down Road my entire life. So I challenge you folks that work in the planning department that have not driven down Setting Down Road, first to realize Setting Down is split by 400. There's a western side of Setting Down on West 400. There's an eastern side of Setting Down. Setting Down is a perfect natural buffer for Hampton Golf Village and the residents on the eastern side of Setting Down. It's one of the reasons I live there. I'm in real estate. I could live anywhere in Forsyth County. I choose Hampton. I do not choose Shiloh Farms because I don't want to live amongst industrial. I'm protected by Setting Down Road from the businesses on 400 by a natural buffer, and it needs to stay that way. So a couple of notes that I wrote down. There was a comment made about the 1,000 apartments. I'm one of those rare people that have followed this, since the 90s. 1,000 apartments is an extreme burden to the infrastructure of the county. I believe that Mr. Gerard said that. Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but this sewer grant will be bringing sewer within 1,000 feet of a 205-acre parcel that is currently zoned Res 6. They don't have sewer right now, but they will after you zone the eastern side of Setting Down M1 and use the grant to bring it to them. That's parcel 236-064, and it's zoned, I believe, for almost 1,000 units. Another thing I want to bring up is the traffic on Setting Down. Jeffrey, can I have your 2 minutes? Yes. All right. Setting Down Road is not a commercial corridor. The teal thing that Mr. Brown showed us a while ago, that got added a few weeks ago to use as leverage in this zoning. The zoning got delayed. When the zoning was originally supposed to be voted on, the right side of Setting Down was not in that Coal Mountain Overlay District. It is now, shocker. Well, my point here is that when you start putting industrial on the east side of Setting Down, on the east side of 400, not on 400, you've set a precedent. There's going to be industrial all up and down that road. There's going to be traffic all up and down that road. My children cross the street to the library. Hundreds of children in our neighborhood cross the street to the library. And you're going to make a nice little road with residents on the right side and 400 on the left side into not such a nice little road anymore. One final point is about conditions. They're going to always tell you, we can condition it, we can condition it, we can condition it. Well, did you know Hampton Golf Village currently has a condition from the zoning in 1999 that no residential developments are allowed to connect to our sewer? There's currently over half a dozen residential developments connected to Hampton Sewer. Conditions don't mean anything.
Before you give that to somebody else, hold your applause. We don't allow applause.
These are also all facts, Commissioner Mills.
Okay, Ken, talk about the 1990 agreement that he's saying that nobody can hook on.
Well, that was the purpose of dealing with the package plant that had to be protected because it was not capable of serving other residential developments. But once the county, as Mr. Lucas mentioned, contributed $3.1 million to expand that plant, that condition had no application. That was not the same plant we're talking about. We have now had a plant that has a 800,000 gallon target capacity, which is a different plant and did not need the protection of only serving Hampton.
So what was in place then, it's not valid now?
Not what's in place now. No.
And you can't just make it be. And talk about, Tom, saying the Coal Mountain overlay was just changed this week to add that property.
The map I displayed showed the Coal Mountain overlay. That did not change last week.
And the comprehensive plan didn't change, showing this as an industrial corridor this week, or this last week.
I don't know if, I don't know what corridors changed off the top of my head, but we have not made any changes to our comprehensive plan. We've transmitted changes to the state that are under review.
But we've not changed in 5 years that comp plan, other than what board action was made on commercial nodes.
Right, well, yes, and this gets, we're in the final stages of an update we've already transmitted to the state. I don't want to make this sound more confusing than it is, but there's a lot going on that topic right now. But the overlay that I referenced in Teal, that did not change last week.
Thank you. No, it didn't change 4 weeks ago.
That's also incorrect.
That is incorrect. Just because you say something doesn't make it a fact. And just because you get applause doesn't mean it a fact. The facts are the facts. And the facts, I mean, y'all can base your decision about liking something or not liking it, but you should make it on facts. That's why I've asked all this staff to be here, because I kept hearing things that were being said that were so untrue. And so untrue. You've had your chance. But it is on and on about things that are not factual. And that's why I asked staff to present it, because I didn't want it to be, oh, she's just a politician and it's coming from her. Or another rumor that got out there that I just created that road so it would help my own trucking company. And I've heard that repeatedly. And it's not true. It's so not true. That trucking company, I'm 60, that trucking company is 56 years old. It has been able to operate and make a great profit without that road. It does not need the road. In fact, if you'll be realistic and think for yourself and not what you're being fed, you will see that why would a rendering plant or a trucking company, for that matter, want a public road to go by them? Why would they want to open up that for the public to view? When right now, that they have, honestly, the use of a county road that it's almost just like a private road. I mean, where trucks can sit in the road, where trucks can back in and back out, and all of a sudden you've got a large transportation route that will be coming through, people trying to go east-west, to 306 and avoid that Hammond's Crossing area. It doesn't even make sense what's being suggested, but it doesn't stop people from making up their own conspiracy theories and people believing it, because it does not, when you don't want to support something or you're against something, you want to believe anything you can. And I mean, it's just not true. And I mean, I can't make you believe anything, but I can tell you, we don't need the road and we don't care about the road. In fact, if I were to ask my brother-in-law who runs the trucking company, do you want a road to come by this business and you have to lose part of your land for a road to come in that you use every square inch of? He would say not just no, he would say hell no. You've already, hold on. Do we have any other comments or speakers? This guy's been waiting.
Yes.
Hold on. You go ahead on the front. He's been waiting.
Let her go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tina Hecht. I also live in the Hamptons. I have a couple of concerns. These are spec properties, and I'm like Andy. I think that the property in between 400 and setting down is probably the best use for that. And we have met with the Hughes group one-on-one, and I believe that they have every intention of working to make that development so that trucks can't come on to setting down. They even talked about putting a barrier up there so trucks can't turn out and come on to setting down, that they would be forced to go towards 400. And there are other entrances on 400. But the east side of setting down, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. Once that is there, the only place for those trucks to go is on setting down. Yeah, if there's a traffic light at Bottoms Road and it opens onto Bottoms Road, but it doesn't open onto Bottoms Road. And I watch the trucks up and down setting down every single day. My other concern is, let's face it, everybody's in business to make money. So these are going to be developed and built as spec properties. Once those spec properties are filled up and you've got a good cap rate going, they're going to go on the market and they're going to get sold. And then people are going to come in and they're going to require other cups. And those cups are going to get passed. So the cups that are there now and the conditions that are there now, they won't last. as that area grows and as those are rented out and as businesses come in, there'll be other applications for other cups, and things will change. That's my concern.
Do either of the developers want to address any of the concerns? I mean, I think Kevin, probably yours is more in question. And you're not asking for any cups. David,
Okay, hang on.
let him have them.
Hey, my name's Kevin Seifert with the Pacific Group. As it relates to conditions and your reference to having worked with the Hughes Group, our site is more constricted by conditions than theirs is. We are bound by the same architectural review process that they will be. Just based on the actual conditions, I think it would show clearly we will be essentially building very similar to them. And I think, as Commissioner Mills mentioned, while we are competitors, whether we all own these buildings for a long time, whether we sell the buildings, whether we sell the land, any of those versions, it can go through different ownership, but the architecture and the uses are protected by the conditions in the ordinance. We do work really well with the Hughes Group. We're happy to meet on the same items. I think our conditions already restrict us and such. Specific to setting down, if and when the light at Bottoms goes in, we will be required to immediately enact, well, within 6 months, but to enact a right out only scenario, which will force us to Bottoms to use that light. I believe at all times, based on the conditions, there's no through trucks from Bottoms north. So from a enforceable use by the county, trucking can't travel north past Hampton.
Who enforces that?
I will let the county answer that question, but what I'll say on that, that's on top of the fact that traffic coming in or out of our site would be trying to get to 400 to either go south or to go north. It doesn't make, for us, we struggle to understand the concept that anybody would travel north on setting down past Bottoms, because they would take Bottoms and get to 400 to go north, and they surely will use the light at setting down to go south prior to the Bottoms light hopefully getting installed. So I think that's just address those comments.
Okay, hang on, let me, everybody. My name is Drew Wade. I live at 5010 Setting Down. I butt up to the 13th tee box of the Hamptons. I was there before y'all were. A lot of you here probably know me by now, but you can find out where I'm at real easy. But first off, I want to say the county putting the zoning application in, I don't understand that. I do. I'm kind of learning a little bit here because you're streamlining it. You streamlined it. You bypass a lot of the technical stuff that needs to be addressed. Oh yeah, no traffic study. There was no traffic study done on 4071.
It wasn't required, but there already
Okay, it's not
has
required, but that is a residential road, and you're going to try to tie in Smith and Leland together, correct? Yes or no?
But that will be studied before it's done. I mean, they might recommend
Okay.
that.
And
I mean,
then
it'd have to be studied before they do
And
a
then
design.
you just got through telling us, saying, none of your family business trucks will come through that road.
No,
Let me
I didn't say
let
that
me-
they would never come through.
That's what you just said.
No, I did not say they would not use the road if it was built. I said they don't need the road. They have no need for the
Okay,
road.
so they build a road, they tie Leland, and they tie into Smith. What are they gonna do? They're gonna cut through there, right to 400. You can tell, you know that's gonna happen. There are signs on each end of Setting Down Road, no trucks. What happens? They come through there all the time. And I see them flying there. School buses, we've got school buses that go there every morning and every afternoon. They come around the curve, it's right there, that S curve coming in front of my house. People come flying down through them, trucks flying down through there. That road is not built for this industrial type. You cannot guarantee what kind of vehicles are going to come out of this industrial site at the 471. The one that's down at 400, that's great. That's where they need to be. They don't need to be up on our road.
John?
And the other thing is, I've lived there. I looked at the sign. It's 6 on 6-2. Y'all put the sign up. It's in the curve. There's no way, unless you try to pull off the road, and then you do, you're going to be in the kudzu patch, to even read the thing. I never received a letter. To this date, I have yet to receive anything from the applicant, which is the South County Commissioners. Nothing from the South County Commissioners about this. If it hadn't been for the Hamptons letting me know this, I would never even know that's what it was, because you cannot stop there. The sign is gone now. Y'all pulled the sign up.
We haven't.
It's not there anymore. It's been gone a month. So
Somebody had to have taken it down. It wasn't us.
And you look at the map where it showed you're pulling the sewer from up there down. What's going to happen is when you get that one industrial part, you're going to try to take the rest of the road. You already got the west side, which is fine. That's over there. That's good. Their road has been residential for the last 25 years. I've been there. And I have family that's there. That's been there longer than that. That's who I bought my property from. This place does not need to be there. We're going to have somebody die on that road because of them trucks.
John, can you talk about Ordinance 101 that's made as part of a zoning and what y'all, I mean, we don't know what requirements they're going to make them do. I mean, can you just talk about that so they'll understand?
They'll have to.
Let him.
No, Ordinance 101 regulates access for all developments, and so they'll have to be in compliance with that, and it's basically models the DOT manual for driveway access for developments. So, you know, based upon that and the traffic patterns, then they would either have to build right turn lanes and or left turn lanes for the access to the development. That would be the requirement at the time of permitting, you know, per the ordinance. And at that time, if it's determined that a traffic study is needed, then that's the time when that's done prior to permitting to determine what improvements are required for their access.
But you've already rezoned it for industrial. Why can't you do a traffic study now? Look at the road structure itself. I'm a retired firefighter. I used to drive fire trucks. I know how big they are. They come by my house every day, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day because of the facility that's down at there at the Hamptons entrance. Them fire trucks barely will run in between the white line and the yellow line. I know that for a fact. So this site does not need to be there. I had nothing to do with the developer. He's fine. We're going to get trucks in there that road is not meant for, and they're going to cut through there. I understand that, okay, for South County Sheriff, they're busy. If they see a truck come through there, that's their obligation to stop them. But we can't depend on them to sit there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to do that.
I asked her to put the conditions up so you could read those about the road or about the right in, the right out, and the different conditions that are being put in place.
Yes, I didn't see that on the website. How you doing? My name is Ken Rufnako. I live on Setting Down in Glenhaven, right across the street from the library. You know, I'm retired, and I see trucks flying down Setting Down right in front of the library, doing 45, 50 miles an hour, and dump trucks. And this project hasn't even started yet. Dump trucks, Budweiser trucks, UPS trucks, big trucks, you know, 16-wheelers. You know, and this isn't even started yet. So what's it going to look like when it happens? You know, and God, you know, I'm originally from New Jersey, and I know what traffic looks like. You know, it's 10 minutes from George Washington Bridge, so I don't want this to happen down here. I've only been down here for 17 years now, and I see this is happening. So that's my point, because you don't need that. You don't need anybody getting killed. And you also got a senior citizen. I volunteer at the Oaks. You got senior citizens, dementia the measure right on the corner there on Setting Down and the Oaks. You know, they come walking out, they're gonna get hit by a truck. You know, you don't need this stuff. Then you're gonna end up with big lawsuits on your hands. Thank you.
All right, we've got time for another comment if anybody else has a comment.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mike Larson. I live in the Hamptons also, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this meeting tonight. I share a lot of the concerns that the folks have already mentioned here, so I won't rehash or go into those. I am curious, though, as we're talking about this traffic in and out, there'll be some period of time, probably years, before there is a light at Bottoms Road, if I understand that correctly. Is it practical to think that 18-wheelers are going to pull out of an industrial park and then take a left across 400? It's just not practical. And so until that road is built up and in a condition that supports that type of traffic, I don't see why it makes sense to approve having those go on down through there. It really doesn't work. And then my only other real concern, do you have that slide that had the conditional use permits on it? Is that one still in there?
You could go back up to the top of the conditions. It was in there too.
It was toward the end of it, I know that. The original slide that popped up looked pretty, I think it was on what you were just on.
But it's the same. She just copied it from here.
Oh, okay.
These are the real conditions.
That's it. So the first slide that you had put up that showed the restrictions, conditions that would be put on that property, even 4056 out on 400, those look pretty good. But when you get to the conditional use permits, in the application, those would allow for a 24-hour trucking operation. Those would allow for a Coke Foods facility to move in there and, you know, run a food processing plant and operate 24 hours a day like the one down here in Cumming does and the downtown corridor. So my concern would be that we address what those conditional use permits are and don't make it quite so wide open. The only other thing I'll say is that I love the presentation that you guys put together out there. The boards look terrific. But there's setbacks all around those boards in the presentations that are probably 200 feet or more. They're gorgeous. They're all landscaped. If you read in the zoning application there that the county submitted, we did away with all the setbacks, or we reduced them to negligible or nothing. So it won't be like the Bluegrass Lakes Park, industrial park. You can drive up 400 and you barely see a building through the trees. I mean, they're pushed back. And when you go down McFarland, they're pushed back behind all kinds of landscaping. That's not what this does. That's not what this does. This allows for the buildings and the hardscape and everything to be built right up to the edge of these properties. And I think about the folks who are on Setting Down that back up to those properties. Having a Coke Foods or a Tyson or a food processing
plant. But look
plant
at one.
in their backyard.
I mean, look at I. Food processing plants, including fish and poultry facilities.
Right. Look at transportation.
Or restriction.
I understand that, but then look at the cups in 4056. Transportation, communication, I'm sorry, truck terminals, right there below it. I mean, right? And then look up at the top there, cold storage plants and frozen food lockers, food processing plants, including fish and poultry facilities, 24-hour operations.
I mean, it is a prohibition. I don't know.
Except it's a prohibition in the broad scope, but in the cup, in the actual zoning permit, those are there. Am I wrong?
The attorney, I think it's a mistake. I mean, these are draft, and that's why your concerns need to be addressed, and we need to get them right before they're voted on.
It must be a draft because it's not online anymore.
I can answer some of that. So my name is Christopher Light. I'm a local entitlement attorney. I work for the Hughes Group. When we came and we're talking about what we would like, this is Cade McDonald, by the way, with the Hughes Group too. I went through the M1 use category, and I was like pointing things out to these guys, what's possible, and they're like, we don't know exactly what it is, but the truth is, most of the things are going to be office warehouse type uses. But we have put things in there that they're like, well, maybe, possibly this could be, but of course, when we requested those things, it's before any of these conditions were worked out. So hearing some of that, I think I can speak for Kate and Tommy, some of those concerns. And the 24-hour one, I hear you. That could be something really weird.
It can operate 24 hours. Personally, I don't care, depending on what it is. My problem is a poultry processing facility that
Sure.
operates 24 hours.
No, that makes sense. And the 24-hour one is a common request by industrial type users. And the reason is is it's hard to enforce. It's hard to define what it is. The planning staff has defined in the past that you have to close your doors for 2 hours in a 24-hour period. Well, if somebody wanted to work that hours that you couldn't, typically nobody wants you to anyway, you would just close your hours, in the middle of the day and work all night. So it's not a great way to define that anyway. So we typically put that in there so there's no problems with enforcement.
Do y'all have any problem cutting or trimming this cup list down?
No, I think we can certainly, after we've had some of that same feedback in some of our meetings, Commissioner, and hearing it tonight, I think we can certainly look at trimming the list down. Look, if it's on a prohibited list in the conditions, that overrides the cup request anyway. So certainly the ones that conflict we can remove.
If they approve it, right?
I think the conditions would control.
I mean, if they vote to approve the application as it is, then it overrides it. I mean, there's a term.
No,
right?
if it says it's prohibited.
Right. I mean, I think I understand the conflict, though. The conditions are going to control what can go on the property, but I understand your question is, if there's a direct conflict with a cup versus a condition, then why approve the cup in the first place, is I think the point you're making, which makes sense to me.
I do too.
I agree with that totally.
Yep. And your second part of your question, and the pictures outside, those are to scale. So that is exactly, and we're actually held to a substantially similar factor. Tom's office, when they go to put in a development permit, it has to be substantially similar to the site plan that, if it's approved, that's on file. And there's a determination of whether you're requesting a minor change or a major change, and Tom Brown's office makes that determination. But that landscape plan is to scale. And we did request a buffer variance, but it's really just for where the road comes in through the middle of the site. It gets a little close to the property line and can't be in a buffer, and that's the only place that it may look like it's a little closer than that 40 feet. But no setbacks or anything like that have been requested to be amended.
Thank you, Christopher.
If you remove the setbacks, then we can that's a concept plan, right? But we can.
We'll make it, if it comes forward and we make it would be substantially similar. And also we have the architectural review that reviews the landscape to make sure it says what we have said it would be. And then we also have a third factor that whoever's the District 4 Commissioner, they have to sign off on it too.
And even if we accept all that, even if we accept all that as true, then we still have the base problem, and that's that Bottoms Road on 400 is not an intersection proper for trucks to be turning out of. I drove a small box truck for a time. I hated driving taking lefts across 400.
I think that when you read the DRI report and all the conditions, that maybe you could address what all the DRI says y'all need to put in.
First of all, thanks everybody for coming out. Like, I understand where you're coming from. Commissioner, I understand why you're up there fighting. If you sit in our seat and you read through the UDC, the code, that I've never seen anything as strict as Forsyth counties. Like, hats off. So that's level one, to protect you. Level two is we're in an overlay, which takes those already extraordinarily strict development codes and takes it up a notch.
And Coal Mountain Overlay is one of the strictest.
Okay, that's number two. Number three is these conditions. Like, what Commissioner Mills is not telling you about is, in these conditions, we have to pay for and be subject to third-party architectural review. So we know the meadows, she knows the meadows. Like, what we think and what we think are, we're gonna, to be successful, I wanna be 10 to 15% better than the meadows, which is, it is an absolute Class A institutional industrial development. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, I wanted him to explain to you about the DRI.
It's still industrial. It can be pretty. It can be as pretty as we want to make it, but we live on it every day. I drive on it. I walk my kids on this road. I don't want industrial on it. I don't want industrial where I have my kids. I walk to the library. I cross setting down. I'm not trying to fight with dump trucks, semi-trucks, whatever. Industrial. It's industrial. I don't want to live by it. You wouldn't either, Ms. Mills. If this was down the street from where you live, you wouldn't want it either. It's not unreasonable for us to feel this way.
I don't think it's unreasonable either. I think the nomenclature is in play, and the first thing that people think when they think industrial is dirty, loud, smelly. I don't know of one building in the Meadows that's dirty, loud, or smelly. There's a half a dozen data centers. There's
So where's the Meadows?
I don't know out on those. McFarland.
Can you, Christopher, address that, and then we're going to close this down?
So for the Hughes deal on the 400 side, it was large enough to reach a threshold where we had to submit a full-blown traffic study and plan to the Atlanta Regional Commission that's studied by Greta Transportation and GDOT. The county staff is involved with that, and we hired Lowe engineers to do the traffic study, which was submitted as part of that. And then they come back with a report and make recommendations. And a couple of those things are like what John Kennard mentioned about turn lanes in and out off Bottoms Road into the site. But the others are, the big one is that they will require a light as soon as the warrants are met. And Kate and I were just talking, they're gonna have to do a light warrant analysis study that David McKee was talking about earlier if this property gets rezoned. That's a very extensive study to do, so they wanted to make sure they got the zoning before they did that. But they'll have to do that study. And I don't want to talk for Kate and Tommy, but I've heard them say if a light doesn't go there, they're kind of iffy about developing the site anyway, because you're right. It doesn't make sense for trucks to only go north. They need to go south. That's where they're going. So how do they get south? And the only way is to get a light at 400. So the light's a big deal. It's a big deal for them, especially. It's a big deal for development across the street. It's a big deal for these guys. So I think that everybody's working towards that goal. Why don't you talk about a little bit about some of your client bases and some of the other projects? I think that's.
No, we're developing this on a speculative basis, which kind of goes back to why we're asking for the 24-hour condition, because a data center runs 24 hours a day.
Well, 24 hours not nearly as concerning as food processing facility for 24 hours.
They have locked that down. Like, I don't.
That was a request at the beginning, so we can.
I mean, if it's going to be a collection of microbreweries and microdistilleries, I think you might get a lot of the neighbors on board.
Amen. I mean, I think her vision to get to come after the Meadows is a privilege, because you get to see all the good things that they did and then take it up a couple notches. So it's,
All right, I want to thank everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll take you and then we'll be done.
Tony, can you, so before everybody leaves, can you put the QR codes up here? That should be a good way so everybody can get in touch with us if there's any questions that don't get answered.
Okay, I want to ask one question. How do we stop the east side of shutting down? As the members of Hampton who don't want it, and we know how troublesome that's going to be. Not only that, how much intimate domain is going to happen, because you're going to have to take property away from the people who own the property there to put in the streets and put in the area for them to have that property. So our question to you is, how do we stop this?
That's a tough one, because it's the hardest job in being a commissioner is lots of times you have, I mean, it'll be put to a vote. You know, there's 5 votes. It's not 1. And we use, why I wanted to show y'all was all the things, and I think, Ken, if you would talk about Georgia law and zoning law, I mean, I want them to hear what we have to deal with in zoning decisions.
Well, I mean, all the frustrations that we're hearing, I mean, there's frustration about the industrial, but there's also frustration about the loss of green space. There's frustration about the loss of trees. And the reality is, and I wish I could tell you that there is some jurisdiction in Georgia that has found the magic elixir to keep all of their property that's not developed as green space. But if there is, I'm not aware of it. Georgia law contemplates that individuals have a right to a reasonable investment-based expectation of economic recovery on their property. And so the notion that we can require people to keep their property agricultural or green space is simply not accurate. We have the right to plan, which we do with our comprehensive plan, and then we have the right to zone, which is how we make our comprehensive plan become effective. Think of it this way. When you plan your budget, that's planning. When you go shopping, that's execution. It's the same sort of thing. So we have the right to plan, which the board has done, and then we have the right to execute that plan, which is the zoning. But we don't have the ability to say that everybody gets to have a reasonable economic yield on their property except you. You have to keep your property fallow and green space for everyone else. If local governments want to purchase green space, they need to buy it. Otherwise, there's an entitlement for some degree of economic yield on your property, and that is why this Board of Commissioners has a UDC that is locked down crazy tight and a comprehensive plan that is continually being reviewed. That's just the law.
Thank you. And Georgia is a property rights state. I mean, where some states that some of you have moved from might not be a property rights state. But Georgia, meaning that the laws tend to favor property owners. And that's people that live in subdivisions too. You have a right to your property as well.
And I will further tell you, again, more to, well, everyone, is that I do this in other jurisdictions besides Forsyth County. Forsyth County is a difficult jurisdiction from the perspective of attempting to set a high bar for development. I will tell you that what counts as low density in Forsyth County does not count as low density in other jurisdictions. Forsyth County has its own unique definition of low density, and it is low. And I will also tell you that this county is in a constant state of trying to do it better. I've been here since 2016 when the complete rules were changed, moratoriums were put in place, performance standards were heightened, lot yields were reduced, and that came with its own consequences, but that is what this county does. If this Board of Commissioners has the ability to lock down properties, they will come to me and ask me if we can do that, and I have to tell them the truth. That is why they hired me, and I do that.
I mean, I was at a meeting today with the ACCG, which is Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, and Forsyth County was used as the county that so many things are brought at the state level to try to change things because of how difficult Forsyth County is. As far as, I mean, like they knew I was sitting there, and Todd Edwards makes no bones about it, that so many of the bills they deal with is because Forsyth County standards are so high. I mean, I wouldn't dare even think about bringing anything before Hampton, who I have really worked hard to work with, if it were a bad product, or if it was less than what your homes are, or if it was going to be a negative that I felt on the community.
We've got the Falls on 400 across the street.
The Falls was zoned in 2005.
Okay, but it's there.
It was zoned in 2005, and as he just said, you can't stop it. But we did make it better, and Hampton helped. Hampton helped a lot to make it better. They got real involved, and they raised the standards, and they helped a lot in that.
I accept what he says is true, and I understand that people have a right and a need to develop their properties and make income off of them. I'm curious, was there a comprehensive plan when the neighborhood and when the golf course was approved to put in that area?
Then.
There must have been, right? And did that comprehensive plan envision industrial abutting that neighborhood? No. Or multifamily housing abutting that neighborhood? So we decided along the way to sort of get rid of that comprehensive plan, update it to the benefit of some, probably to the detriment of others. And I think that's probably where a lot of the concern is.
But you didn't hear what Tom Brown said, that it is the vision of the citizens. The comp plan has, I don't know how much we spent this time, but had how many public meetings to get input from the citizens in the comp plan?
This plan's 5 years old or so, I guess, right?
I can tell you we consistently far exceed the state minimums for public engagement in comprehensive planning.
And so it's not our vision. It was what was created by the citizens. And 400, it is a transportation route.
Setting down east is another.
But I want to give this lady up front the chance to speak because she hasn't. And then we've got
Commissioner, we got one more gentleman here as well.
And we've got comment cards. that are out there, and y'all can leave your questions and comments, and we will get back to you, I promise.
While Lauren's walking up there, we'll take this gentleman.
Yeah, I don't pretend to know zoning in any way, shape, or form, but my one question is, why is the property owner not requesting the zoning, and why is the county doing it for them?
I thought I addressed that, of why it was a county initiated, and it was because it was an economic development project. It was because we had already designated for where the sewer would go, and this parcel was identified in it. And it was also, you know, the job creation that it is going to create. I mean, all of those things, I mean, I tried to go into detail about how we decide to county initiate. I mean, this is not the first one. I've done several. This makes my 4th industrial park that has been county initiated. I mean, we've got one on Marset that was county initiated. We voted on one on Setting Down that was last week, and then these two. I mean, it's really because it fits with what our board has decided is a priority with the Forsyth, with the chamber, with our economic development dollars, and trying to help our tax base too. And it doesn't put, I know the way y'all feel, it puts a great burden. But when you do subdivisions and you see the burden it puts on schools and new schools to be built and the cost that goes with them, the roads, that is really because of the traffic problems, is so much of the bedroom community that it creates. I mean, it does not put a burden on infrastructure in the same manner.
Well, in the county initiated, Commissioner, if you let me, I will say this about county initiated. I do a lot of zoning in the county, and for my clients, I try to advise not to do it because all the things that Ken just told you about go out the wayside with property rights. It's a commissioner-led application. We have no really say. We're begging for mercy all the time instead of having at least a little bit of law on our side when we apply for an application under the comp plan and stuff like that. So for my part, on county initiated, it's actually worse for the potential developer, in just my opinion, though.
All right, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Lois Chenier, and I live in the Hamptons. I'm not asking for comments, observations for tonight. This was a very well orchestrated presentation, and I appreciate everybody's time here. But I don't feel, I came here with some hesitancy to support this project, but I also came with an open mind. Nothing that was presented to me tonight has changed how I feel about that. I also found that every time you asked what was the vote on certain actions, it was always 5-0. That raises a red flag to me. And as my commissioner, when you have come to our meetings, and you came to the last one, the HOA meeting, and we discussed this, I did not walk away with the feeling that the HOA was supportive of this as it was represented in your meeting with the commissioner, the rest of the commission.
Thank you. All right, well, I appreciate so much y'all being here. Don't forget, there's cards out there, and there's also my business cards are out there that's got my contact info. Also, it has a QR code. If you'll sign up for that, you'll get monthly newsletters about every zoning, your parks, everything, that businesses opening, anything. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, staff. Thank you to our sheriff's office. Thank you, Slade.